Good morning, everyone. Excited for the last session of the day, or just excited to see Jay and hear this presentation. We are glad you're here. Again, my name is Beth Ann Talsma. I am business faculty at Kalamazoo Valley Community College and your host this morning. Very happy to be here with you. Just a couple notes, virtual etiquette as we go forward. Please do use the chat function to ask questions or engage with conversation. We will make certain that Jay is aware of these and addresses your questions. The share audio and video button is for hosts and presenters, so please ignore that if it's visible on your screen. I don't want you frustrated when I keep denying your request. Also, you may notice at the top of your screen, it looks like the session's being recorded. We are not certain exactly which sessions are being made available afterwards, but if they are, we will certainly make sure the information gets out to the attendees. And then one last encouragement for visiting our exhibitors, thanking them for supporting us and supporting those that support us. This session is Developing Virtual Learning Environments with Jay Keeler from Lake Michigan College. Jay is lead faculty for application development / geospatial technology at Lake Michigan College. He was an early adopter of what is now called high-flex learning and has developed several courses leveraging the web and instructional technology to deliver robust content in multiple modalities. Jay holds undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Michigan and is also an AVIXA Certified Technology Specialist, CTS. Welcome, Jay, and thank you for presenting today. I'll turn off my mic and video so not to be a distraction and turn the session over to you.
Okay, thank you, Beth Ann, for that introduction, and welcome everyone this morning. My boss, Ken Flowers, who is now president of MODAC, thought it would be useful if I shared with all of you how we have implemented something called our flexible learning environment. I guess a broader label that you could put on it, at least one that has been coined by the Higher Learning Commission and the Chronicle of Higher Ed, is high flex teaching. So our goal, and this is 5 years back, long before COVID came to town, was how to leverage the web and our video conferencing capability, along with Canvas, a pretty robust LMS, to increase access to our curriculum to students for both our certificate and degree programs, and frankly, just to expand beyond our geographic boundaries. And if you want to take a minute to look at a 10,000-foot view of what this approach looks like, the Chronicle had a national roundtable back in January called Making High Flex Teaching Work on Your Campus. And one of the people there, his name is Brian Beatty, and he's been in the game longer than anyone else. He's at San Francisco State. And he identified these 4 pillars of high flex learning. You want to make sure that you emphasize learner choice. You want to make sure that you've got equivalence participation modes. People don't get short shrifted if they're doing something at a distance. You want to make sure that you can reuse the content that you've developed regardless of the modality. And you want to make sure that students have accessibility. And, the digital divide that COVID brought with it has also been a hurdle on the student end of things. But general requirements to implement this kind of approach: you have to have proper faculty training, and that means both full-time and part-time. You don't want to neglect your adjuncts. You will have to have some type of upgraded classroom technology, particularly if you haven't had anything in the classroom before. And then you need instructional design and support staff to help you develop and then support this as you roll it out. And the bottom line is, whatever you call it, flexible learning environment, high flex, virtual learning, it takes time, money, and it takes a great deal of energy to be able to pull that off. More on the front end than the back end. You do reap rewards down the road if you use it. And what we did in our approach, and again, this was organic. We started doing this back in 2014, 2015, when I first came to the campus, is to push as many of our courses into this flexible learning environment or high flex format that we could. Courses that required access to particular types of equipment, or if you're teaching a natural science course, a course with a wet lab, I mean, those things you could not do at a distance, but there are portions of those courses that could be delivered. The lecture portion, for instance, could be delivered in this format. And then once we developed those courses to run in multiple modes, we would, in our registration system, cross-list what we called an asynchronous online course. It's all at a distance, so you could technically say it's all online, but students were looking for something they didn't have to necessarily show up at a scheduled time. So our marketing department said, we'll call that online. Then we had a virtual listing, meant you had to show up, but you could show up through a webcam, or you could show up in person, right? So it didn't matter how you registered for the course, though, whether you're registered for it 100% asynchronous online, if you registered for it synchronous online, or whether you planned on coming in seat. All of these sections in our registration system were merged into our Canvas LMS, and all students had access to each other and all of the resources common to the course. And they still had, even if they were asynchronous, a pretty robust exchange with their colleagues, because all of our courses have implemented a managed discussion, which, according to the Higher Learning Commission, all remote courses as of July 1st of this year, even if they're synchronous, are supposed to have a managed discussion to make sure that you've got that connectedness. And then to make sure that they could do that, even though I wasn't moderating the course, we embedded a Zoom link and left it open 24/7. So that allowed students to use that as a study group as well.
Excuse me, Jay.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a question in the chat about some noise around you. It's getting difficult to hear you. Do you have a door open or anything?
I don't.
All right. Brenda,
Yeah.
I'm thinking it might be on your end somewhere then. Thank you, Jay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Okay. So we did require students who showed up in seat to join the virtual class anyway. We've got a computer lab and we've got webcams at every station. And then we captured the session. We posted those recorded class sessions into Canvas, which also included not only the interaction, but annotation that we would make in the recording real time with the use of a tablet. And we posted those things out there so students who attended live, either virtually or in person, were essentially the proxies for students who would watch those things at a different time. We also pushed all of our assignments and assessments off into Canvas using a secure feature called Lockdown Browser that made sure that students couldn't Google questions while they're taking the exam and that. And there's all kinds of different products that you could potentially adopt to ensure some type of integrity to the testing process. But we pushed the testing out there as well, because of course, if we had students who were 100% asynchronous, they wouldn't be showing up to take an exam either. So we embedded all of those assessments also into the video assets, because we've discovered that students weren't always diligent about viewing those recorded class sessions. So as a reward, we'll call it a reward, for them watching those sessions, we would sprinkle some very simple quiz questions throughout the video. So the only way that they could get those assessments knocked out is to actually view the recorded class session. So we had the required managed discussion when we had the integrated quizzes in those video assets. So what we wanted to achieve, and we've done a pretty good job here with the CS curriculum, because all of my colleagues have adopted the same approach, is we will schedule these synchronous classes, and people could attend virtually or people could attend in person. They could do it from home. They could do it from the library if they didn't have decent internet at home. We cured a lot of that by issuing hotspots, or they could just do that asynchronously at their convenience through the week. Regardless of how they registered for the course, though, people could show up any way they want, any given time. So in Canvas, we have the content, but in Banner, our registration system, we have all of these different flavors, what look to be different classes, right? Meeting in different places, but notice they're all at the same time. And of course, we've got one that's just listed as 100% asynchronous. It didn't matter what they registered for. They all ended up in the same Canvas class, the same LMS class. So you see here in my screenshot, I've got two different CRNs here merged into that particular course shell. So it didn't matter how they registered for it. They're all in the same place. It didn't matter what modality they committed to when they registered. They could change up any given time. And when they got into the LMS, the very first module that they would see in Canvas is, hey, welcome to Lake Michigan College in this virtual classroom. What does this mean? How do you get started using your phone or your computer, your Mac, your PC, whatever it is, to get access to the course? And then how do you take your assessments with the secure tool called Lockdown Browser? So we had at the very top of every course an introduction to how to navigate the modality and the content in the course. And we also had a little PDF that they could read about that addressed some questions about whether they'd ever meet their instructor or their colleagues in person. So we front loaded that into every Canvas shell. We did not rely upon an orientation, a campus-wide orientation to do that. And then past that very first module, we had this basic module with all the course resources. So frequently I'll license a book and put it into Canvas so students don't wait a month to get the book they bought on eBay and it's strapped to a pigeon's butt or something. Everyone can get started right away. But at the very top of the resources area, there is an embedded link to Zoom. And that made it pretty easy for people to get into the virtual class. They just had to get into Canvas and then they were there. Okay, so I see a question from Linda. How do you manage the FERPA restrictions by having cross-listing be done automatically? Does the teacher have to do all those steps or does the college do it for you? All right, so in Canvas, I could do the cross-listing myself, but our Canvas admin typically does it for us. Hopefully that addressed it. I don't think that's a FERPA issue, is it? If I'm
I think Linda Lee might be mentioning the students seeing students in other sections. And one of the ways you can do that, Linda, is such as like in discussions and stuff, you could break discussions up per section or per group. So they're only interacting with students in their own section of the course or in a group that you have set up for them to be in. That decision and setting is done by the instructor. At KVCC, we have the same thing where our Faculty Success Center will do the cross-listing, combining the courses, but it's up to me to go in and say what they can see and what they can't.
Right.
You can put in the chat, Linda Lee, if we've answered it, or if that's still more questions on that. Right. It's a good one.
Yeah, well, we just blend everyone together. It doesn't matter how they registered for the course. They're all in there together. There could be 10 sections of 10 students. There's 100 of them in there interacting with each other. And that's what we're happy with, actually. So behind the scenes, I've got my one Zoom account, but I have set up all these recurring sessions that are dedicated to a particular class. So it makes it easy for me to manage what's going on with a particular course. If I, for whatever reason, wanted to put a waiting room on a class, I could. If I wanted to change the way that people enter or leave the course, I could do that. It gives me some degree, some granularity here about how to use Zoom, maybe tweak it a little bit depending upon the course that I'm using Zoom to support. And then my classroom is common. The configuration is typical for what we do here in CIS at the college. I've got workstations that have a monitor and a webcam with a microphone. And regardless of whether they're in front of me or not, everyone has a webcam and a mic. And they unmute their mic when they want to ask or answer a question. That eliminates the feedback problem with the mics. But the students can see and hear remote participants, even though they're right in front of me. So I don't have to worry about walking around with a boom mic or a mic array in the ceiling or whatever else, because every workstation has a mic. Different use cases, different teaching styles, you would use different technology, but this is what we've done in our classroom. And I've got a pair of short throw interactive projectors. Those are touch screen. I've got them stitched together. So I've got one continuous, essentially wallboard there, desktop, and it is mirrored on my Podium computer. In my Podium, I've got this right screen is my staging screen. No one ever sees that. My left screen is my share screen. That's what people see on my projector in my classroom. That's what people see at home. And I've got this Wacom tablet that I use to annotate whatever I happen to be doing that particular day. Again, depending upon your use case, you might have a different configuration, but this is a standard one in our classroom. If you haven't already committed to technology and have it implemented, I would say be skeptical of whoever you have come as a consultant and recommend technology for your classroom. We had some people come in attached to, first it was Blue Water and then it was Sextant, and they wanted to sell us a $15,000 matrix that did switching and scaling and 16 inputs and all this crazy stuff. We just have a couple of projectors, a couple of whiteboards, a couple of monitors on a podium computer. Everything you see here equipment-wise, the projectors on the wall, the whiteboards mated to them, and this podium is about $15,000. Now, that doesn't include the cost of having someone install your projectors, right? But a far cry from what the technology consultants wanted to sell us when we came in. So instead of getting 10 classrooms with this tech, we've got 50 classrooms with this tech. Okay. So as you've probably all used something like Zoom or something similar before, as you run the class virtually, you will see the participants there, and you can eliminate them from the grid if you want, all right? But I think it's reassuring for students to see and hear each other. And then those recordings are posted. So there is a Zoom import right here in Canvas, and then students who view it asynchronously, or maybe students who came and they want to review something, they can jump in here and click on any of these recordings that we've got posted after the class session. And then Canvas has an embedded player. And if they click on the embedded player, this is a bit of a liability, and Blackboard runs the same way. You have a chooser where you have to pick a resolution. And students don't necessarily know that that's what that little icon does. So it starts very grainy until they click on it. And then, of course, it's clear enough to see detail. Now, if you're only looking at me, if it's fuzzy, all the better. But if it's a spreadsheet or something, textual that's got small font, you'd want to make sure that that plays at a higher resolution. That was kind of a problem for us. Plus, we didn't have a really good way of managing our video assets. A while back, Canvas, if you stuck content in a page, they didn't charge you for it. Now they do. So the storage space requirements went up exponentially as people started to adopt video. And we decided to go with a different product. So we are now using something called Kaltura. Those of you who have looked at some of these technologies, Kaltura, Panopto, TechSmith Relay, there's some others. We went with Kaltura because of its features and its price point, but what you have here, you're using Panopto, right? So Panopto is much more expensive. It does do some things that Kaltura doesn't, but we decided to go with Kaltura, and now we have this media gallery that we can manage all of our video assets in one single repository and then push those things out to any number of courses. So when you're using Canvas, you would have to create copies. And if you had to edit one, then you had to worry about editing or making changes, percolating through all of them. With Kaltura, you just deploy from a common resource area. And on top of that, you don't have to worry about choosing the resolution. So it has something called adaptive bitrate sampling, where it will sense the user's internet connection speed. And within a couple of seconds of playing, if it's a decent connection, it will give you high res. And if it's not a decent connection, it'll throttle back to a lower resolution. You will get a degradation in image quality, but it won't stop playing. And you can always download it and view it offline if you want to do that. But Kaltura was useful for that, solving that problem. And then the other thing is, and we see a drop-off, everyone has seen a drop-off of participation when students had the option to show up when they felt like it or just do the course asynchronously as their taste permitted. So Kaltura allows us to look at the videos and see who's watching what. and I can get an overall assessment, an average of what people are watching, or I can drill down. And here you see on my screen 2 different students, one who has watched the whole video and one who bailed after 5 minutes. So I can see what students are watching and not watching. And to make sure that people watch these things, we're now sprinkling little questions in them that automatically go right into the LMS. So they don't get their quiz points if they don't actually suffer through listening to me talk or present or watch the recorded session. It's usually the value comes in recording sessions and those students who act or ask and answer questions and interact with their proxies. But now I've got a tool that allows me to see what people are actually doing and a way to compel them to watch it. Okay, so the quizzes or assessments, how do you do that and have some type of integrity? So we decided to adopt this product called Respondus Lockdown Browser. We make that available to students. The assessments are all pushed out here. It tells them they have to use Lockdown Browser. Can people defeat that security? They can. Can they run 2 computers at once and type in your assessments on the one computer that's not locked down? Sure, they can. But, you know, if you write a good assessment and then plus if you put a time limit on it, it's really not been a problem. So this allows us to push content out there and assessments out there. So now, because I'm not spending in-seat time watching students take a quiz, I can cover more content. And if I wanted to, I could go in and use Lockdown Browser and require that they use the camera, you know, the automated software that will detect things like a student reading from a book and whatever. We don't do that because, frankly, I don't see the need. And some other institutions have cited that as a privacy concern. But you could implement that if you want. So let me pause for a moment and try to catch up on the chat. Do you require cameras to be turned on? I do not. People might have a bad hair day. You know, they can use an avatar that's socially acceptable. Kaltura, right? Beth Ann's already put Kaltura out there. We purchased that product on a 3-year license as part of a consortium that was statewide, but it's based on your FTEs, what it's going to end up costing you.
Okay, because it looks like they do a lot of things here. They've got virtual events, town halls, cloud TV, virtual classroom, LMS video. Okay.
Yeah, Kaltura is a whole video solution for the whole campus. It's not just instruction.
Okay.
But, you know, in Panopto, someone mentioned Panopto, right?
We do at Kalamazoo.
Right. Yeah. Panopto is a great product, and it allows you to do multiple camera feeds and automate recording and some other things, but it was twice as much money as Kaltura. So that's why we didn't do it. Yeah, let's see. Does Kaltura sync with Canvas? You bet.
I did hear you say that, right. It goes into the gradebook.
Well, my quizzes can go into the Kaltura video that goes into the gradebook, but Kaltura is integrated. There's an LTI integration with Canvas and other LMSs as well. So
nice.
And it also has an integrated editor. So if you say something inappropriate, like I would never do, or if you had a tech issue that you didn't want to preserve in the recording, you can go in there and snip it out easily.
Nice.
I can't say enough nice things about Kaltura. It really is a wonderful tool.
Before we get to Ron's question, what about captioning? Does it do automatic captioning?
Yep. So Kaltura will do mechanical captioning. It's about 70 to 80% accurate on its own. If you give it a glossary with proper nouns and technical terms, you'll get it up to about 85. Depends on whether you slur your speech.
Right.
But if you want it flawless, there is going to have to be some human captioning. And the way that Kaltura does that is they allow you to pick whoever you want to do your captioning. And I use CLO 24. And if you really do need to do that, and that's been an on-demand type of thing, it's about $1.60 a minute for the stuff that doesn't automatically get mechanically transcribed. But the captioning is great, even for people who don't have an ADA need. Because
what's the name of the captioning?
CIELO 24. CIELO 24. That's the one that I use. And I also teach at the University of Michigan, and we use Kaltura and CLO 24 there as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'll put that in the chat for everyone too.
Cool.
Yeah, let's get Ron's question here. It's a good one. I like it.
All right. Is there anything to prevent a student from clicking play and walking away? Yes, embedded quiz questions. That's why I started doing it. Yeah. See, they don't know. I can see whether they watch it or not. I don't like put that out there. I just like to keep track, you know? Yeah. All right. So back to this bit. Respondus lockdown browser. I've had great success with it. You know, like anything, if someone wants to steal your car, if someone's a professional and determined, they're going to steal your car. So if someone's really determined to defeat the security of this product, they can. Would I use it for students in med school? No, you know, but it does what it needs to do for us. And it frees me up to do more content in the course. So overall, what do we have as an outcome? Well, we got significant increases in enrollment because it was flexible and it fit in people's schedule. For instance, the fellow who taught geology here at Lake Michigan College retired, and because I've got a hybrid background, they asked me to pick up that course. That's what I teach at U of M. And I converted that course to FLE format, or high flex format, in January of this year. And enrollment increased 312%. We gave students an at-home kit. They didn't have to show up unless they wanted to. If they wanted to show up, they could do it in seat, or they could do it in virtually, right? So you get these big enrollment increases simply because it increases flexibility and accessibility, right? And students, again, regardless of how they registered for the course, were told, because they're all in the same Canvas shell, doesn't matter how you're registered, do whatever works for you any given day of the week. And what students self-selected for was they would watch the recorded sessions for the most part. There was a core of people that just liked the discipline and the familiarity and the accessibility of being in person. But people who were planning on doing it asynchronously would still show up when the video did not address a particular question that they had. And they found that pretty useful. Because again, I don't watch students take tests. I increased content about 15% in my courses, which was happy. You know, I thought was a win, but I don't know how students felt about that. We're doing more than other students in this other class. Yes, you are. I supersized you for free. Students, again, who otherwise weren't able to attend class were now able to do so. I've got all these interesting cases. I had a truck driver, for instance, and his name was Elmer Wheeler, which has got to be the best name for a truck driver on the planet. But he would pop in, you know, as if he were asking a question, but he'd never have a question. I said, Elmer, why are you always popping in with a question? He said, it's cab noise. He said, cab noise? He said, yeah, I'm taking class while I'm driving down the freeway, right? I don't know if I'd endorse that as a use case, but anyway, so there's students who, if they didn't have this format, wouldn't be able to take class. And then I left that Zoom link open so students could interact with each other without me being around. And we have embedded tutors in most of our CIS classes, and that's how the embedded tutors would interact with those students too. And of course, the same link was used for the Zoom, the virtual office hours. The same Zoom link was used for virtual office hours. So we've had great success. Those are our outcomes with the approach. And this is live, a course that I'm teaching right now. And again, I've got my module that shows what this is all about. We have, class sessions where people round off the rough edges. We've got this embedded Zoom link. We've got a set of expectations, how to get set up, managed discussion every week, a learning guide. This managed discussion requires everyone to post solve some type of problem, and there's always a hook that allows them to interject how they feel about something to try to get them personally engaged. It's always a fact-based declaration how they feel about something. But the beauty of the managed discussion is it doesn't matter how you're registered for the course. I've got people who have never met in person. They've never even talked live, and there's a pretty spirited discussion. And so we're pretty happy about adding that as a way to make sure we've got engagement. And now that I'm putting these little assessments inside the recordings, and can compel people to view them. We don't have that drop off that we were seeing early on, where if people were allowed to not show up, they just kind of dug themselves into a hole. So that's where we're at. Hopefully I did a halfway decent job of showing you how we developed it and how we manage it. That introduction that you would get from the Chronicle of Higher Ed has a lot of good information in terms of strategy and planning, but there isn't anything there in terms of like brass tacks in terms of how to actually implement. And we went through this renovation here a couple of years ago, and that's why the college sent me off to Avixa to be trained as a technology specialist, so I could call the technology folks out on their design plans. So if you do embark on this type of this implementation, I would say be very skeptical, get a second opinion about what people are recommending for you technology-wise, because beyond the installation, other than the installation costs, like I said, my classroom, podium, monitors, computers, everything is $25,000. That's everything except the chairs. So.
Wow, that is great, Jay. Just note to everyone, we've got about 15 minutes left in our session. Loving the stuff coming in the chat. And I've got more for you. Right here in your discussions, how much time do the students have to discuss? Are they in 1 week encapsulated, or I'm doing some now, I'm starting to span 2-3 weeks, depending on how much they're participating.
Okay, so every week I have a discussion. It opens up at 12:01 a.m. on Monday. They have until Friday midnight to post a response to the discussion question, which usually involves them going to the web and extending what it is they covered in the class. And then they have the weekend to respond to at least one other person in a substantive way. Not, oh yeah, what he said.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's how we do it. But I don't have them span more than 1 week.
But you're getting spirited discussions in just those 7 days.
Yeah. Like I'll give you an example. So like, again, this is the geology course. So this discussion in rocks and minerals, they said, hey, carbon is the only element in pencil lead, graphite, and in diamond. Why are they different? So they have to look at, crystalline structure and have a fact-based response. And then I said, so how do you feel about a lab-grown diamond? Because
I know the answer to that one.
because it's still diamond. It's just, how do you feel about it? And then people come back, oh, it's great. There's no conflict involved. And, and devastated the earth and, it's cheaper. And then someone comes back and says, well, my love and I am the most unique thing in the world. And if I'm not worth a natural diamond, then it's the wrong guy. And I just want to say, run now. Right. Anyway, so there's always something that ties to the content. And then there's always some way to try to get them engaged personally. So.
I like where you're headed. I just struggle with doing it in 7 days. I'm exhausted as a student trying to do it. And as an instructor trying to engage with them.
So the grading part of it, I got you. So when I do a lot of the grading, I will do a video response to and it's, to me, it's better. It gets more personal too. But I use a rubric for the discussions.
Right.
It's either poor, okay, or great.
Yeah.
And it's boom, 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 and it's easy to get through them. I'll grant you it takes some time, but. Sure. Yeah, but I use a rubric.
So your video response is the overall, because that's the other thing I've learned in my progression as an instructor is engagement in the discussion by the instructor doesn't mean I'm responding to every single student. I can do an overall response.
Right.
And move the discussion along, because then when I grade, I have feedback to every individual student.
Right. Yep. That's exactly what I do. If I feel like the discussion's not moving forward, I'll go in there and stick my foot in it, but I try not to.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you set up the discussions so that the student has to post before can see what other students posted?
Good question. I usually do. Because, and then people are like, well, what if I'm wrong? And I'll say, it's okay if you're wrong. You can be totally wrong. You can be totally off base. You get full credit if you compare notes and you all come to a consensus.
And you have a factual basis for it. Please be wrong. We need someone to be wrong.
No, I don't have any shortage of that.
Oh, okay.
I have people who are afraid to be wrong. And I try to tell them it's okay if you're wrong. You can make a mistake. You just don't want to make the same mistake. So.
Right. So yeah, I have another question, but I just want to encourage, before we get to that, I want to encourage everyone, please continue adding your questions in for Jay into the chat here. We'd love to make sure we get those answered. My last question here was coming back to doing more in the course. I love your ideas there, getting more deeper into content, if you will. And I think I heard you say your students haven't said much other than, hey, we have to do more work than these other courses do. I still go by the national average of 2 to 3 hours per credit hour outside the classroom.
Sure. But what'll happen is if I'm teaching a course and a colleague is teaching a course that is not structured this way, I will do an extra chapter or two in the course, or I'll do an extra portion of a chapter. And they'll go, well, I got a friend taking so-and-so, and they don't have to do that. It's like, well, you're right, because, they're taking a test in the classroom. And then sometimes people go, well, that's not fair. I got to do more. It's like, okay.
Right. Yeah, because I love it. I love being better prepared.
Yeah. So I supersized you for free. You're good.
Yeah. So they're not comparing. So they're not necessarily complaining about the amount of time, just that they are more than the other courses.
Right. I mean, let's face it. I don't know what your experience is, but like I've taken, my courses at U of M when I was doing the engineering curriculum, I mean, it was probably like 6 hours out of class for every hour in class, right? And I don't have any student tell me they spend 3 hours for every hour. They just don't. And they just expect it to, I'm working, I'm going to school, blah, blah, blah. I'm managing life and a family. And I'm sympathetic to all of that. And as community college people, we train the backbone of the workforce and community, right?
Right.
So you tend to be flexible, but that doesn't mean you exempt them from those things,
Right. Linda Lee put in that she's hearing the same, and she's explaining they're getting more benefit for their money. I like your phrase there, Jay. I supersized you for free.
Yeah.
That is good. I tell my students, you'll be better prepared. I used to hear complaints about, why do I have to take this test in class? Other people are doing it as a take home. I'm like, well, you know it. Your material better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or I'll say, do you want to get
Linda Lee.
I'll just say, do you want to get a job when you're done? Well, yeah. Well, how are you going to get a job? You're going to need a recommendation, right? Well, yeah. Will you give me one? Yeah, if you show up. Right. What about the people who complain about doing that extra 10%? Maybe not.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you, Linda Lee, for agreeing. Yeah. We're preaching to the choir, are we?
We are.
Well, that is awesome. Any other questions for Jay? Or Jay, is there anything that you wanted to share with us in addition here?
If you're not already where we're at and you need some advice on how to get to where you need to be, please reach out to me, because the process of fighting back against the technology consultants who are brought in as part of our architectural firm for the renovation, what they were looking to do is maximize their profit.
Sure.
And when we put these little simple projectors in here, and they said, do you need a switcher? No, I don't. I need to plug in a laptop. That's what I need to do. Mm-hmm. Well, what are you going to do if you got to manage these things remotely? And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, how about turning them on and off? If you don't have this switcher, you can't automatically turn it off. I said, you got me there. Watch this. And I pushed the power button on the wall.
Took care of that.
Well, that's so I fought them quite a bit, and that's why the college just said, okay, fine, we're going to go teach you to be properly trained so you can have you can be on par with these folks. So all I would say is, if you get to that point, you need some advice, let me know, because I can tell you what works, what doesn't, what they're going to try to stick you with that isn't worth the money. And I'm talking even big lecture halls. We spent $35,000 on a projector. And because the architect didn't put the proper standoff for the bracket for the projector, they had to retrofit a lens that reduced its resolution after spending $35,000 on a 4K projector. Yeah. And they don't tell you that stuff. And there isn't necessarily anyone in-house that'll call them out on that. So anyway, if you need any help, let me know.
Save some money there.
Yeah.
Dave, you put your email address in the chat there as the request.
I will be happy to do that.
Have that on there.
Yeah.
And I know
there you go.
Dr. Hilliker was asking if this recording will be shared, and I will certainly pass your request along to Ken Flowers. I know he's working with Motown Digital on which recordings will be available.
Sure.
It looks like all of them were recorded, but we got to figure out which ones actually go out to attendees. But we will certainly keep you informed as all attendees formed as that decision is made, if it's not already.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Very practical, Jay. Thank you so much for your time. And
all right.
We're at 11:55. We have 5 minutes left. If anyone else has a question or comment for Jay, or you need to leave, thank you so much for joining us at Trends. And one more plug for the exhibitors. Please give them our support for supporting us. Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks, Beth Ann. You're a great moderator.
I appreciate that. I enjoy doing it. I'm hearing a lot of good presentations doing it. This is some of the best way to attend.
All right. All right, everyone. Take care. I'm gone.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.